Starfield. It's finally here. Well, it's been here for a little while now. I've had a lot of thoughts, a lot of things I wanted to share about this game. Being a long-time Bethesda fan, someone who has literally played Morrowind, Skyrim, and even Fallout 4, for example, for many hours. I think it was time to share my thoughts, make my first actual review. I am by no means a professional in any way, shape, or form, but this game, it really makes me want to get my opinion out there on certain things about this game and talk about some of the stuff that people use, for example, Bethesda fans, as well defenses for the game itself. I think we need to hold games to a higher standard. But anyway, I think we should get into it. Just to let everyone know, this will have some spoilers, not too many. I want to talk about later on. Some of the good will be basically storyline portions that I did enjoy. But yeah. So I've played Bethesda games for a good, I want to say, 15 years, give or take. My very first Bethesda game was Daggerfall, going into Morrowind, and while I did miss out on the Fallout series until Fallout 4, after Fallout 4, I fell in love with it and kind of backtracked, played some of the older ones, got into the lore heavily. And then, of course, Skyrim. Well, I mean, there's a reason why it's been remade a billion times, right? But anyway, I had some initial thoughts going into Starfield. I honestly, from the previews that we saw and all the things they had shown, the infamous, No Man's Sky intro that they made and stuff like that, my expectations were low at the beginning. But I did balance it out, and I did go into this game, excited and ready for a new Bethesda experience. Starfield. I have talked a lot about this game. I have even bought the controller. I even have the headset, thanks to my brother. But I've said a lot of controversial things about this game over the last few months. I think what bugs me the most is this game going to be Skyrim in space? So, starting the game up was interesting. You get your character, you start to mine, and you just go through this opening sequence where you don't feel like anybody's special. You just feel like a normal worker in some mine shaft. Everything seems to be, pretty normal. When you grab your first mining laser and actually go to mine those first couple spots, you realize right away that sense of how similar it is to No Man's Sky. Well, while it isn't No Man's Sky, you get that feeling, you know what I mean? That feeling that if somebody just walked into the room for a split second while you were mining, they would say, "Hey, is that No Man's Sky you're playing?" And you're like, no, it's Starfield. But you have to explain it. And I think, in my opinion, that's one of the big red flags right away for Starfield. After going and getting the artifact and going through all that stuff, after landing on Crete, I immediately realized how similar this game was to No Man's Sky when it came to scanning creatures, scanning plant life, and mining. Going through the planet, it was pretty barren. I tried to make fun with it. Finding some of the creatures was interesting, how they acted, how they became hostile, stuff like that. I did quickly learn how useless the companions were. And I know things like mods can make them better, but I mean, Vasco literally sat there and did nothing against a Terramorph. This thing is strong. After that, basically just continued the mission, did what I needed to do, as I started going through the game more, after we finished that, taking care of all the pirates, exploring, going through the ship, realizing that with the crafting system there was a lot of things that I wanted to do but couldn't do because they required skill points, which is totally fine. But as you go into that game, one thing that game doesn't tell you is that a lot of things require skill points to even do them. For example, you can't stealth right out of the box, you can't cook right out of the box, you need skill points to do that. And I find that very interesting. You need skill points to use your backpack booster. So you went through your entire life as a miner, a space person, and you never learned how to learn your booster pack. I think it's funny because I actually went through the entire game until the very end without putting a point in booster packs because I was so annoyed by that. When it comes to ship crafting, I actually found that portion of the game to be quite interesting. At first, it's very difficult to build ships. It doesn't really hold your hand, and anytime you try to build anything, you're hit with all of these red and yellow errors and warnings. It's not very helpful, but as you get used to the system, it goes from being detrimental and kind of annoying and making you feel like you don't know what you're doing to a huge asset, where space combat is like the reverse. It goes from being difficult to very easy. And that's another thing. Let's talk about space combat. In the early game, when you're doing space combat, it's not a big deal. When you're doing storyline missions, it's actually very easy to kill the storyline ships. But if you choose to explore, like if you just choose to go to some planet or whatever, say it's a low-level planet, you'll end up getting annihilated very, very easily, which I found very disturbing. Once you put a lot of points into space combat, it actually evens out. Even if you use the pre-built ships, just putting skill points into space combat will allow you to get over that hurdle, and the battles will go from being, one-sided if they have more than one ship to you're the spaceship god. It's kind of depressing that you actually need to put a lot of points into that for that to happen, but that's just how they designed it. Next, I want to talk about space. Todd Howard talked about, before the game came out, that space is barren and that we should expect most of space to be empty. But, okay, did everything there, I guess. Bernard Star level 1. Well, let's go there. I don't mind questing,
Craft jump successful, just like your lights.
part of the allure is supposed to be do what you want. I'm not finding anything to do, really. It's weird. I think a lot of people were expecting it to be as empty as it was. The game totes freedom, it totes exploration. It talks about how you need to go out in the stars and make a name for yourself and have adventures. But how can you have adventures when you land on planets and there's nothing there? There's a rock here, there's a rock there, there's the same monster you saw just on the previous planet before. They could be two totally different planets. You could have a planet that is full of vegetation and life and everything, and it'll have the same weird armadillo creature that you see on another planet that's like a dead moon, with just 3 blades of grass and 3 rocks. It doesn't make any sense. It breaks the immersion also. I know that humans traveling throughout the Milky Way galaxy would transport creatures, but to have the same creatures on so many planets, the terramorphs are one thing. That's part of a story. That makes sense. But all these other creatures, there's really no explanation. It's lazy. Maybe they should have used some kind of generator to generate different types of creatures. I'm not sure. I'm not a gaming expert in that regard, but it breaks the immersion. There's not much to explore. Scanning stuff. I don't really want to scan stuff. literally the same alien. Next, I want to talk about lockpicking. Now, lockpicking is something that I actually got into arguments with people online, real-life friends. Many people thought I was crazy for saying the things I did, but I think the lockpicking system is atrocious. When you come from the older Bethesda games, which has like the sweet spot mechanic, the reason why the sweet spot mechanic works so well is because it's a mechanic where you can do that a few hundred or even 1,000 times, and you don't get too wore out on it. It's quick, it's accessible, it does have a little bit of skill, but at the end of the day, it's something you're going to do so many times that you want to fly through it. The lockpicking in Starfield is annoying. It starts off easy, and yes, it's different and it's fun, but when you get to the end of the game, or you've played it for 80 to 100 hours, and you're trying to do, like, every lock is a master lock, and you're trying to pick master locks over and over again, it just becomes... it's detrimental to your playthrough, because you want to fly through bases, loot what you need to, do whatever it is you're doing, and move on. But instead, you'll have a room with like 4 master locks, and you have to decide whether you want to skip the items or move on. And if you do it, even if you have saved up charges, you're still looking at like 5 to 10 minutes of lockpicking, even if you're really good at the game. It really holds you back. Outposts, there's not much to say about Outposts. I played over 80 hours. I made an outpost, and I felt no need to use it because it's another thing wrapped behind skills, so you need to level to make it better. The storage in the outpost is terrible, and as someone who is an item, hoarder, it didn't do me any good because I tried to make the small caches to store things, and of course they don't hold anything, just like everything in Starfield except for the safe in your room. Nothing has good carrying capacity, at least in the early and mid game. So at the end of the day, I found no use for outposts at all, especially when you could buy all materials, all tools, and everything from the planets. They serve no purpose. They're literally there if you just want to be creative and, I don't know, build a Waffle House on Earth. That's really all they serve. But yeah. Then there's the powers. I got about, I want to say, 70% of the powers in my playthrough. During my stream, I ended up getting to a power that needed a stupid ship requirement when I was already in a bad mood, so I decided to just X-nay it. Most of the powers were useless. Now, I understand that there's New Game Plus and the powers can power up, but how does that benefit a Bethesda player, someone who wants to go through everything in a playthrough, and then you hit them with New Game Plus is how you make those powers better? I just don't see it. I don't see how that is a benefit to anybody. Every power I got was pretty much useless in combat. Solar flare sounded cool and ended up being useless. You find yourself only using the gravity power because literally it's overpowered to kill multiple mobs. Or you found yourself using personal oxygen bubble when you were over encumbered. Literally, that's it. I'd like to see people argue about using any other power other than those two, because the rest of them at best were just gimmicks. It felt like a crappy Dragon Wall system from Skyrim. It just felt like an afterthought. And lastly, I kind of want to talk about bugs. That I think the thing that got me, that had me so negative before I started playing, were the perfect reviews with no bugs. So many outlets before the game came out on early access were claiming that the game was running perfectly. It was running perfectly on PC and Xbox, what have you. I got that game. I ran into so many bugs. It's insane. I from the game crashing out of nowhere to crashing when going into outposts or cities just for no reason. I had many crashes in Neon. I had companion pathing issues, all the way till the worst bug, which was the Freestar quest. I got the bug where it completely just stops working if you've done a ton of questing in Neon. And that was kind of the final nail in the coffin when I stopped caring about my playthrough on my stream and I just beat the game. Because if there's something I hate when games stop you from doing things you're supposed to be able to do. Yes? Game? Did I get my first game crash? Oh. Today's starting off great. Starting off great. I probably will build an actual base because I like doing that sort of thing. Are you serious? It crashed again? What is going on? Honestly, I could go on and on about the bad, and I have been throughout most of this already. There's so much more between the lack of weapons, the lack of weapon balance. You know, they just melee is completely useless. Why doesn't the game have a power attack? Why? It's a Bethesda game. I don't understand. In space, there's no power attacks. It doesn't make any sense to me. And we could talk about things like how bland some of the side quests are. But I think I've gone on enough about the bad. I do want to talk about the little bit of good, which is certain parts of the game that were interesting. Honestly, the portion of the game with the legacy and the credit ship, like the legacy credit ship, was pretty awesome. I found it to be... At first I hated it because I'm claustrophobic, so I get anxiety in close quarters, and when I play on a big screen and, you know, I have the headset and all that, so I get really immersed. And that particular scene really got to me, like that game moment. I think Londinian is awesome. I think they did a really good job coming up with the story for Londinian, the story for the Xeno attacks, the Xeno warfare. I think the alien tribute is also pretty awesome. And of course, I think every Bethesda game needs something like when you join the UC and you get that orientation that basically explains the world. I think every Bethesda game needs that at the beginning, some way. They need to work that in. What? Oh! 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 Oh!
Look, I wouldn't engage directly if you could avoid it. The kill lanes, they're set up but need power. There's breakers on each of the buildings you can throw to get them live. Once they're online, lead the Terramorph towards the lights and watch the fireworks. You can do this. Show it messed with the wrong shock trooper.
Oh, this is definitely like Alien. That's what this is. This is like...
System rearm failed. Additional power required.
What? No! Get away from me! Honestly, my last thoughts. I'm not a master reviewer. This is the first review I've ever done for a game, and I can't believe that the first review I'm ever doing for a game is a Bethesda game, no less. I'm torn, because this game, while I did fear it was going to have the issues that it did, I went into this just thinking, okay, it's a Bethesda game, I'm going to get lost in it, I'm going to have fun. And I did. There were portions, there were days that I was playing it on stream that I did have fun. Like, I had genuine excitement for some of the things I was doing. I think the problem is that the Bethesda formula that they tried to implement into this space game that they wanted to do, it just didn't work. Like, the game is, like, people talk about ambition. Well, I do think Bethesda was too ambitious. It had too many systems in place. While my favorite thing in the entire game is shipbuilding, I believe shipbuilding shouldn't have been a part of the game. I believe that Space travel should have been a part of the game. I know that sounds crazy, but I think it should have been like a 1 or 2 solar system game where you basically just fast travel to the planets. Or if it really had to have ships, it just had a preset number, maybe 10 to 20 like fighter cargo type ships that you could buy and trade with. And you just flew to the planets in like a short amount of time, or you warped to them, whatever the case may be, and you actually landed on them. Because so many games are doing that now, I think that's one of the reasons why people got up in the air about landing on the planets. You know, like, you could say it's No Man's Sky's fault and stuff like that, but I mean, space games, that's always been a big deal. I remember when No Man's Sky first came out, literally one of the biggest things people were gasping about was the fact that you could fly from the space through the atmosphere to the planet floor, which was incredible. I know a lot of people are going to say that this is a good game and that, you know, mods will fix it and mods will make it better, but people need to understand that you need to have a good game at the get-go. Like, if you just say that mods will fix everything, then what's the point of even making the games in the first place? Like, Skyrim is an amazing game, you know, and that might be a kind of a hot take, because I know as Skyrim has aged, there are more and more people these days that like to hate on it and like to make fun of it because, you know, it's been remade on everything, including your refrigerator. And probably we'll get an ultra remaster on the next consoles, because why not? But there's a reason why it's got remade. Yes, it's partially mods, but the reality is it was just a good game. And I think that's what we were all expecting from Bethesda, but what we got was Starfield, which, regardless of the amount of stars that are in Starfield, it honestly, it just doesn't burn bright enough for me, and I wish it did. I hope everybody enjoyed this review. It's my first time, and I'm new to this, and I just wanted to get my opinions and thoughts out there, because this game, it should have been better. We get such crappy games these days. I mean, there's only a few games this year that I thought were really good, and it's not because I'm too picky. I used to think so, but at the end of the day, it's because just game making has changed. And I just want to, like, I know this sounds funny, I just want to go back to the old days, but that'll never happen. Let's just hope the rest of the games that come out from here on out are amazing, and that they don't screw up Elder Scrolls 6. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like and sub button. It helps out a ton. If you hated my review, tell me in the comments why you hated it. I appreciate all feedback. Check out my streams.